I'm still trying to do new stuff, not necessarily like new, but like new for me, try to explore new musical territory.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Mike from Blood of the Wolf, the guitar player and vocalist in the band.
And Mike, how would you describe Blood of the Wolf? What kind of music do you make, would you say?
Black and death metal. I'd say with a mostly an emphasis on death metal like aggression with some black metal thrown in there too. I like mostly like what my friends call assault black metal. So bands like Marduk, Infernal War, Dark Funeral, like those types of bands.
So basically the faster, more unrelenting style of black metal.
Yeah, Belphegor. I should mention them. They're one of my favorites too.
And as far as the black metal side of the equation, would you say that some of your melodies have something of a blackened tinge to them?
Yeah, because I would say in almost every song there is like melodic parts, and I guess that's where the black metal part would come in.
And if I'm not mistaken, Blood of the Wolf started off as a solo project. Is that correct?
Kind of, because in the early formation of the band, well, I mean, there wasn't really. When I first started writing music for the band, it was just me writing tunes that I liked, and then when I had about like 6 or 7 songs that I liked, then I started putting together a band. But then that was like around 2013, and I had like a full lineup in 2015, but I was also considering moving to Michigan. So yeah, it wasn't at first it was I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with it. So yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it was kind of like a solo project at first, but I would say since 2015, it's been like a real band.
What were your intentions in forming Blood of the Wolf? What did you set out to accomplish?
Well, I was in a band before. I was in a couple of bands before, but I'd started my own band in 2000 called Relic, and really the only goal I had was just to do better than I did with that band, if you know what I mean. Like just not make the same mistakes, do things right. I was also in a band called Kommandant for a while, for a couple of years, and I really liked the way the founder of that band, his name was Jim. We got along really well, and he was like not directly, but sort of like indirectly kind of a mentor, just in like seeing how he ran his band. I was like, okay, this is how I need to do things too. So it's kind of what I set out to do is just do things right, not make the same mistakes.
Not make the same mistakes musically, or in terms of like the running of the band and like that aspect of being in a band?
Yeah, the more of like the business side of the band, not make the same mistakes there. And then just like picking the right shows, making sure to like the financial side of things, like when it came to like pressing merch, pressing CDs, paying for studio time, stuff like that. Like I wasn't gonna wait for like band members to like pony up and put in money and things like that. Not to say that like the band I have now wouldn't do that. I'm just I don't I guess I don't bother asking. I just if there's something that needs to be done and money is required, I just pay for it. Just do it.
Did you have a good idea of what you wanted to play, this kind of black and death metal style, as you formed the project?
I think that's just what I do, like that's just my style. It's not really I don't put a whole lot of thought in before I pick up my guitar and start playing. I don't really like think like, okay, I want to write this type of song. I mean, sometimes I do, but generally speaking, I don't. I tend to start with like a couple of riffs, and if like I have like two or three riffs that kind of flow together, then I feel like okay, that's a good start. Can I flesh this out, turn it into like a full song? And sometimes I'll come up with like certain sections where I'll like, okay, this section we need a break here, or let's make a more intense part here. But generally speaking, I would just say like that's just kind of my style, like black and death metal.
Okay. It just comes naturally to you.
Yeah, I would say so. One of my favorite bands of all time is Vader. So I just I really like their kind of like direct aggression. I really like that. And like I said too, like I'm a big fan of like assault black metal, like Marduk and stuff. So I feel like there's room in that aggression for death metal type sounds and black metal sounds too.
You mentioned that you were also in Commandant. Do you think the style of that band also rubbed off on you in terms of the style on Blood of the Wolf?
I would say a little bit. Their musical style is quite different than Blood of the Wolf. A little bit. Commandant was very. They had a lot of like chromatic riffs and a lot of discordant like note selection. So I liked some of that in my own music, but I would say generally speaking, not. I don't think musically speaking much of that style rubbed off on me. It's a very unique. Okay, so the guy who plays guitar in that band is Jim, and Jim was he had a very like unique style of playing. So I didn't want to like emulate that or anything, but I do think that some of what he was doing was different for me. Like I had never really explored some of like the chord structures and using like discordant open strings behind single strummed notes. And so I did experiment with some of that, but I was in that band I think 2010 to 2012, so it wasn't too long. And so it's been a while anyway since I've done anything. I mean, like 10 years since I was in Commandant. So not so much. No, I don't think it rubbed off on me so much.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
In terms of finding the band members for Blood of the Wolf, was it mostly people from the scene around Chicago?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Like our initial bass player was the bass player in Commandant. He's in a band called Oscilligium now. That was our first bass player. The drummer was just a guy I had known who was like involved in the scene like in the early 2000s when I was in Relic. He ended up not working out, that drummer. And then the other guitar player is a friend of mine who's named Scott. He did a tour with the Chasm, and he was in a band called, I think, Ancient Gods. And so, yeah, he was just another Chicago dude and just a good friend of mine.
I'm curious. Sometimes Blood of the Wolf is referred to as war metal. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think people are talking more about the themes of the band more than the music, or do you think it applies to the music as well?
Well, I like that label. I would not argue with that at all. But I do think it would, sonically speaking, I don't think we sound like any of like the prominent war metal bands. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example.
I mean, I always think of like those Australian bands like
Yeah,
Bestial Warlust or yeah.
yeah. There was a band from Australia that I'm trying to remember the name now. I don't remember the name, but they were pretty popular, I want to say like in the early 2010s, 2012s. And they were a war metal band. I can't remember, but yeah, I don't think we sound like that. But in terms of like lyrical content and song titles, yeah, I would definitely say that is an apt label. I have no problem with that at all. I just think like for fans of that music, if we described ourselves as war metal, they'd probably be disappointed. Or they think it was just too polished and clean. That would be the other thing too.
And the speed of, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily correct to describe Blood of the Wolf as technical, but there is a fair amount of precision to the recordings that I think, that style of music usually shies away from.
Yeah, definitely so. I'm a very, yeah, I would say just precise just in general, just in my nature, just as part of my personality. So yeah, I would think that is definitely like a astute observation. Yeah.
So when you sit down to write songs, how does it usually start for you? Does everything start with a riff for you?
Yeah, I sit down, pick up my guitar, start playing something. If I come up with like generally speaking, like I mentioned earlier, like I need a couple of riffs, two or three riffs that I like, and then I kind of just build from there.
Are you still handling all the songwriting on your own?
Pretty much, yeah, yeah. Every once in a while, there'll be conversations in the band where other people want to contribute, and that's fine. I'm not like limiting anyone. It just seems to happen that, I write the bulk of the material and then demo songs to the guys, and then we just learn them and go from there.
Are the demos that you create pretty finished? Like, do you do all the instruments like guitar, bass, and program drums?
Yes. Yeah. So they're like pretty complete. More and more now, like as I've gotten more familiar with like the digital like instrument world and the digital recording world, like more and more I spend like a lot more time, probably more time than like I should. I'm probably overthinking it at times, but yeah, yeah, it's digital recording is so cheap and the stuff is so good now that it would be almost like foolish to not do that, to not use what's available.
I spoke to somebody who wrote a book about U.S. black metal, and I think that the U.S. black metal scene really exploded once DAWs and home recording became much easier to get and much more affordable, because suddenly you weren't tied to whoever was in your area to help you bring your songs to life. You could do it on your own, and from there find like-minded individuals.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing, at least for people who. I think it's a good thing for people who want to write music and, like you said, like just aren't limited by whoever's available. They can just do it, and they can do it at their own time, at their own leisure, at their own pace. It's not, you don't have to sit around and wait for like band practice. You know what I mean? You can just sit down, pick up your guitar or whatever it is that you want to write music on and just do it. And then if you have something you like, then like you said, you can just kind of like use it to advertise for members, find like-minded individuals.
You mentioned that sometimes you'll get feedback or input from your bandmates. What form does their contributions usually take?
So generally speaking, I like to get their feedback, like verbally speaking, but we've also, for like the last album, for example, like we use Google Drive to put all, like I'll put, like if I demo a song, I'll put it in Google Drive, and then I have like I'll make like a document. And with Google, like anyone can just contribute to the document. So like with the last album, we just had like a Google Doc with like the song titles and things like that, and the guys could just like put their feedback on paper, which was actually really helpful because sometimes like at band practice and stuff, like when they give me verbal feedback, I don't always remember. I'll go home and be like, okay, Frank said this, Chris said this, Max said this. But with the document, it's like, well, it's right there. So you can just refer back to it and be like, okay, this is the part that they didn't like, or this is the part that should go a couple times longer, or this is the melody that could be improved upon, or just stuff like that. So I like having it on paper so I can refer back to it.
But the feedback is more...
Or not really on paper.
Right. But the feedback is more along the lines of like arrangements and things like that?
Yeah, I would say so.
So let's talk about this latest album.
Okay.
It's called For the Declaration of War Eternal.
Yeah.
And it was released on November 18th by Horror, Pain, Gore, Death Productions.
Yes.
When did you start working on this album?
A long time ago, actually, because of COVID, man. I started, let me see here. Our EP, the third record came out in 2019. So I would say like I started writing material probably around 2018, 2019. Probably. I used to write like when the first album came out. The first album was 2015, The Law of Retaliation. And when that album was done, like done mixing, done mastering, pressed, available for sale, I already had the second album written. Like I had it was already done. So for a while there, I was kind of working on like a back catalog of songs, but then I stopped myself from doing that because I just felt like whatever I was like influenced by or whatever I was like kind of going for, I kind of felt like it was like taking a snapshot of like a picture, like a moment in time, and then waiting 2 or 3 years to show it to anybody. And inevitably that's going to happen anyway, because just like music production takes a long time. If you are you sorry, Adrian, I don't know. I don't are you in a band or are you a musician?
I have a death metal bedroom project where I just record with a drum machine and stuff like that.
Okay. So like you finish stuff, but then you got to wait for like if you're taking I don't know if you're like a pro or like like I am totally amateur with like recording and stuff. So like when I'm done, I take my stuff to like a professional. So ultimately there's there's his schedule, there's his timeline, there's his I guess like his like hearing tolerance. You don't want to like push and push and push. You want you want your engineer to have fresh ears every time he's like listening to the project. So there's always waiting, and then there's like waiting for the other guys to do their tracking. You know what I mean? So inevitably, there's always going to be some lapse of time. But I think just like with this album in particular, I really just kind of wanted to like I wanted to be like a little bit more fresh. You know what I mean? Like I guess I don't know, not songs that had been written like 3 4 years ago, but they were anyway because that's just the nature of music. So I just actually it's kind of funny. One of the guy like one of the scene acquaintances ordered a CD. I shipped it to him, and it's a guy I know, and I sent him the CD. He's like, "Oh, I just got this CD. I just listened to it." And I'm like, "Holy shit, you just listened to it?" I was like, "Well, it's only 37 minutes, right?" But like just the years and the hours I've taken to put it together, and just to get that text and realize, well, it's only a 37-minute album. You know, it was just kind of funny.
So I never thought of it that way, but because so many of the bands that I speak to write extremely fast music, which tends to be quite condensed in terms of the runtime. The albums are usually about half an hour long.
Yeah.
But it's as you said, you put in years of work into the writing, the rehearsing, the recording, and it takes somebody half an hour to go through the whole thing. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's I how do I feel about that? That's what it's supposed to be. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it is. They're not going to well, I mean, I'm sure there's some fans out there that, and I'm totally appreciative of the guys that like listen to our stuff over and over again. I thank you so much. But like, of course, like the album's only 37 minutes. It's not like they're getting, I don't know how old you are, but you remember like back in the early 2000s, you get like a DVD and then there'd be like another DVD with all this bonus footage. It's like, we're not making a CD with like a bunch of bonus footage, so we're not documenting everything that we do to write the new album. So that's exactly what it should be. It's a 37-minute album. That's how long it should take to listen to it. And hopefully people listen to it more than one time. But at the end of the day, if they listen to it and like it, that's what's important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. From where I'm sitting, your music has always been very consistent, and this does seem like a continuation of what you were doing on the previous albums. But for you, did you go into this wanting to do anything new or to improve on what you'd done in the past?
Well, first of all, thank you for saying it's consistent. I try to be consistent. With every time I sit down and write music, I try to push myself. Like I try to make things a little bit more interesting. And if a riff I think is like too simple, it's like, okay, can you make this a little bit more like interesting? And sometimes simple riffs are just like, well, it just sounds good the way it is. Like you don't need to overcomplicate it for no reason. But I'm always trying to push myself in trying to explore sort of like different like root notes, like where I'm starting my riffs. or when I start writing like a melody, I'll play with different scales. Like I think on this new album, there's a little bit more. I think I'm kind of reaching outside of the wheelbox a little bit, or wheelhouse. I don't know what the correct word, a toolbox. I'm trying to like, I'm still trying to do new stuff, not necessarily like new, but like new for me, you know,
Right, right.
try to explore new musical territory.
And what form did that take on this album? What is new for you on this album?
I think for me, there is more just changes. And I think like that became more obvious when the guys were learning the tunes. Like the other guitar player, Frank, was just like, there's just a lot more changes in these songs. And
Changes in terms of like time changes and things like that?
not necessarily time changes, but just like riff changes, you know, like if a song goes like riff A, riff B, riff C, then later it might go from riff A to riff C, or like from going into one riff, it's like the second time from riff B to riff C, it's like, well, then the next time you're going from riff B to riff D. So just more, I would say more in terms of like song structure, just more changes, less predictable changes, I guess. I don't know. Like I said, it's not like I don't plan it out. I just kind of like how the song, like how I envision it in my mind's eye, I guess, because it's music, so you're not really looking at it, but just sort of like imagining the flow of the song. I just kind of do what I think sounds correct. I'm not sitting there with like a pencil and paper being like, oh, well, here I went from riff A to riff B, so next time I'm going to go from riff A to riff C. I'm not like thinking about it like that, but I think with this one there were more changes. At least that was kind of like the feedback I got from the band.
On average, how long does it take you to complete a song?
Like I said, like more recently, I've never actually sat down and timed it. I can tell you right now, I started writing a song back in July that I was like, oh, this is badass, and I'm still fucking with it now. So it's like, but it's not like I do it every day either. It's not like I'm sitting down every day like tweaking and playing with a song. But like I said, I'm trying to challenge myself. So I'm less with there are certain songs I put together and just like, yep, that's good. There no changes needed. Like that just kicks ass. There are some songs where I'll like just mess with it, mess with it, mess with it. Like for example, track 7 off of the new album, it's called Ritual Overkill. That song I tinkered with a lot, a lot. And sometimes too, if I keep tinkering, it's like, okay, then there's just something's just not flowing. Just trash it. And I've done that too. So like not everything I write ends up on an album, you know. If there's some riffs I can salvage, then that's great.
Okay. For the songs that don't end up on an album, are they mostly used for salvage, or do you keep some of them aside for like EPs or splits or things like that?
Sometimes I just keep them on the computer and I'll go back and listen to them with like months later. Like one example that would be like on Declaration of War Eternal, track 5, Their Blood Is Our War Paint. That was like those first 2 riffs in that song. Written them, totally forgot about it. I was going through like I have a program, it's called RiffWorks, and I'll save the riffs. And I was going through, I have a folder in my computer called Works in Progress, and I was just going through the Works in Progress, like listening to like the different things I'd started. And I was like, whoa, these 2 riffs are really awesome. Like you should work this out. Like these are worth saving and trying to turn into a song. So I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of forgot what it was. I kind of started rambling.
I'm just curious what happens to those songs. Like, do you save them for a future release or?
Oh, well, I mean, they're still like on the computer somewhere, and I'll probably go back at some point and just like listen to it and see if there's anything worth salvaging. But they just sit in the computer basically for ever.
Okay.
Just rotting, I guess.
When did you finish the writing process for this album, and when did you actually go in to start recording?
Oh, over a year ago. We started tracking over a year ago. We started tracking. Frank came in and laid down his leads in the summer of 2021. I think it was like in July. Frank came over and did his guitar parts. And then Chris came in and did his bass parts, I think in like October of 2021. And then I went into the studio, I think late October, early November. And so I don't remember when that wrapped up. I want to say maybe January. So almost a year ago, it was all finished, but it was done prior, it was wrapped up prior to that. I just don't remember the exact timeline. I know it's been over a year since the songs were like finalized and done. Like these are the songs.
And have you been doing all the tracking at your own home studio?
Yeah, it's not really a home studio. It's just kind of like my own. It's just my room. Yeah, it's a home studio, I guess, but it's not. I don't really have like. I mean, I have good enough gear. Like, I mean, like for the first two albums, I was using DI guitar tracks. Like going into the studio with just direct in guitar tracks, and that was fine. But then as I acquired like more gear, I was like, okay, well, I don't need DI tracks if I have a dual rectifier in a cabinet with good speakers, with vintage 30s, like, and I have an SM57. Why do I need the direct in tracks? I can just like record my guitar. So I spent some time learning how to capture like a good guitar tone with an SM57 and different like mic positions and things like that. And like I tested out like all four speakers on the cabinet, different mic positions and things like that. And so because I'm so anal about my own guitar tone, it was just like, well, I want to go into the studio with something that I know already sounds good. I don't I want to go into the studio and be like, well, here's some DI guitar tracks and let's hope we can capture a good tone with some virtual cabs and virtual heads. It's like, well, you know what? You got the head you want, like then just record it. So, so yeah, so that stuff gets done here.
Okay. And on the albums, are those recorded drums or are they programmed drums?
Those are program drums.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And so the whole philosophy behind that is it's not that our current drummer Max, it's not like he can't handle it or anything like that. It was the timing of the release of the album. He was still doing studio work with his band Disinter at that time. And so he and I had a conversation about using program drums on the album. And he's like, dude, honestly, he's like, recording drums is a pain in the ass. So go right ahead. Go right ahead. Cause he'd been putting in hours of work and just, weekends and going to the studio with the center and stuff. So he was not only okay with it, he was for it. So,
Yeah.
and with the way recording works nowadays, and like you got your own project, so you know how it is. It's like a lot of times what the drums get edited like crazy. They get sampled over and things like that, especially like with modern death metal. So back to that war metal conversation we had earlier. With modern death metal, it's a lot of those sounds you're hearing are supplemented, if not even just totally gone over and replaced. So it just kind of seems like in today's music scene, not to say that drummers aren't important, it's totally important, but I think the sound quality of virtual drums and using drum programming, it's almost like, I don't know, it's almost like why wouldn't you, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have an axe to grind one way or another. I spoke to somebody who is very much into that organic live sound, and it makes more sense for their music because their music is a little bit, even if they're a death metal band, it's a little bit on the punk rock side. I think with death metal, especially with constant blast beats, that's the trickiest thing to record or to capture because there's chaos to it, but there's also precision to it. And how do you find that balance unless you're, using triggers or, finding some way to capture each element individually and then, being able to mix it separately. So
Yeah, and I think ultimately too, like what you owe the audience is a good sounding record. You know what I mean? And like you don't. That's at the end of the day, it's like, do you like the album or don't you? Like do you care if the drums are programmed? Do you care what guitar I used? Do you care what pickups I used? Do you care what amp I played out of? Like, and if you do, like, why?
Yeah.
Like, do you like this song or don't you? It's all music. So
Yeah.
there's yeah, I feel like that's all you really owe your audience is a good product. And how you get that product, I think I don't think the audience is owed that. Like at the end of the day, like if you watch like a magic show, the magician doesn't owe the audience at the end. Okay, well, this is how I performed this act. Like you're not owed that. You're owed a good product, and if you enjoy it, that's what matters. I think that's my philosophy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really feel strongly one way or another. I will speak to bands occasionally who feel very strongly about recording organically or keeping that chaotic feel or whatever. And if that's what they're trying to get across with their music, that's fine. I mean, I can say that my life changed in terms of once I had a laptop that had software on it and was able to program drums. It made my life so much easier in terms of like being able to get my ideas down, but also being able to put across specifically what I want and not like somebody else's idea of like, oh, this is how the drums for this kind of music should sound, or this is how this kind of riff should sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and like you mentioned earlier, like I guess it depends on the band too. Like it depends what you're going for. Like it depends like what you want the product to sound like. If you want it to sound organic and maybe like a little rough or something or authentic, yeah, then program drums is probably not the way for you to go. But if you mentioned like precision, like I like precision in the music. So for me, I don't think it detracts from the music at all. Could you tell?
Could I personally tell that it was programmed drums?
Yeah.
Well, that's the funny thing is I was listening to it and I was like, well, it kind of sounds like a drum machine, but it also sounds like those old Vader records. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
those were triggered, but those were also triggered by a human drummer.
Right.
I think it's maybe somebody with like better ears or a sound engineer could like listen to these and say, oh, this is this program or this is like this trigger or whatever. And I know friends who are really into like that aspect of music production and can tell. But for me personally, like I personally could not tell. Not really.
Well, it's good, good. And at the end of this, and so my thing would be too, like this would be like if somebody liked it and then found out the drums were programmed, they're like, oh, I don't like it. It's like, oh, then go fuck yourself, because like it's like you liked it until you found out how it was made. And again, like I don't feel like the audience is owed the explanation. I don't feel like I have to tell them like, well, hey, that opening riff for Father Warren Throne took me 37 takes. Do you need to know that? Like, it's like, or like when you hear layered vocals, it's like, well, obviously that's more than one take. Like, do like that's not, I don't sound like that. It's a low vocal over a high vocal. It's supposed to sound cool, and so at the end of the day, like if it sounds good, it sounds good. And that's all that I think matters. But I did want to say one thing though, since I have been working with like drum programming, when I hear stuff, I don't necessarily know if it's real drums or not, but I can tell like with certain bands, I can be like, well, that's edited because I can hear the fill. Like usually it's like the tom rolls, like when there's like a tom roll, sometimes you can hear how tight it is and you just know it's like, okay, that's edited. Or at least it's punched in. Like the drummer took he really had to nail that roll. So to me at that point, it's like, all right, so again, like, I don't know, what's the difference? At the end of the day, who cares? I don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other. I do have a strong feeling though that about like people who poo-poo, like, oh, like, you got a drum machine. It's like, oh, dude, have you heard the new Flesh God Apocalypse? Like, you don't think that's edited to shit? Like, they edited the shit out of those drums.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know it's a real drummer and shit, but like, dude, that shit that's edited, man. I hate to tell you.
So we were speaking about the recording of the album. You recorded the tracks on your own, in your own home,
Yeah.
if not home studio.
Yeah.
But you sent it to someone else to have it mixed and mastered. Who ended up working on that?
His name's Joe Tabiri. He's done all of our records. He's in his own band called Mechana. I don't know if you've heard of them. And I've just been working with him since basically like 2014. And he's easy to work with. And when we did this fourth album, I was kind of thinking of trying someone new just because nothing against Joe at all. I just was thinking like maybe like just someone fresh to capture, like maybe get a different sound out of us. But at the end of the day, I was like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, And so, and plus, I really liked the way the third EP. I really liked the way that came out. So I thought about it and thought about it. And I was like, yeah, but Joe's really easy to work with. He's been with the band since the beginning, so he kind of understands like the evolution of the band. So it just seemed like, again, if it's not broken, don't fix it,
Beyond understanding the band and being familiar with you guys, what would you say Joe brings to the sound?
Well, he understands, I think, what I want the music to sound like. So I'm a big fan of like I started listening to death metal in the late 90s, like I want to say around 96, 97, 98, in the early 2000s. And so for me, the records that came out that were a big influence would be like Vader's Litany, Morbid Angel Formula's Fatal to the Flesh, Marduk, Panzer Division Marduk, Belphegor, I would say Pest Apocalypse. I think it's that album, the red one. So I think and he also that's kind of his, where when it comes to like extreme metal, he's a big fan of that like era as well, like kind of the early 2000s. So I think I've never really had to explain a lot to him. Like when we sit down and he imports all the tracks into Pro Tools and starts getting a rough mix going, I've never had to give him much direction in terms of like, oh, you know what, that kick drum is way too dominant, or that snare sounds way too tough, or, or hey, make it a little messy sounding, or make it a little rough, or like, he just kind of, I think like instinctively understood like, okay, it should sound like this. This is what the music should sound like. And so I think what he brings to it is just kind of like a natural understanding of what the music should sound like.
Yeah. So the drums are programmed, but the performances are all you. And this is incredibly fast music. I mean, it sounds like you're playing at something like 240.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, 240, 250. I try not to go above 250 because I feel like it gets a little ridiculous. But then I've been listening to some shit lately that I'm like, okay, this is insane. And I've seen some YouTube videos too. There's this, I don't remember the drummer's name, but he's just this really good. He just does these like drum videos. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy's awesome. But he's just some random dude on YouTube. And I feel like some of the tempos are 240, 250 is like, that's not that fast anymore. I mean, I still think it's pretty damn fast, but it's like, I don't know if you heard the new, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Nordjeval.
No.
Or Nord, Nord, Jevel, Nordjeval. Dude, their new album, it's awesome. But it is fast as fuck. And it's like, I think most of the songs are probably like 260, 270. And I was even talking to Max, our drummer now, and I was listening to the new Dissenter, and I was like, Max, there's some really fast parts on there. And he's like, yeah, that one was like 290 or something. And I was like, holy fuck. So, I mean, I feel like our stuff, it is fast, but if you're looking for like the fastest, we're certainly not the fastest. I think there's bands with way more extreme tempos than we have.
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's always going to be this. That's actually the thing that amazes me about this music, which is, every 5 years, I never thought I would hear a song faster than Angel of Death, when I was like 14, 15 years old. And then, a year later I heard Beneath the Remains. And then after Beneath the Remains, I heard, Entombed Clandestine. And it was like, how does this music keep getting faster? and then there's grindcore and there's black metal, and this music just keeps getting faster. And then there's that next generation of death metal bands with like Crisian and Hate Eternal and Origin. These bands just keep getting faster and faster. And so if there's one thing that doesn't surprise me, it's that there's always, 5 years from now, there's going to be another group of like 19-year-old kids who are just, just ridiculous.
Yeah, play at like 320 BPM. Yeah.
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 But in terms of your own performances and your own recording, do you have to do any kind of conditioning in order to play that fast?
No. I've, to be honest with you, playing fast is my strength. Playing slower is a little bit harder. Yeah, playing slower is a little bit harder. So for me, like, no, it's never been an issue. And even for Max, like, it's not an issue. He's always been extremely fast on the drums. And like, we just played our record release show on November 19th, and dude, he fucking ripped through those songs. It was so fast that was a little bit of a struggle to keep up with him. So yeah, no, there's not really any conditioning. I don't do any conditioning. Vocally, I think, is where I have to basically just kind of practice to keep my voice in shape, especially like endurance wise. Not that like a set, if we practice like a 30-minute set, like before shows, I'll like to run through the set twice, just so that when it comes to the show, it's like, well, I've conditioned myself to sing 2 sets. So doing 1 set should be like no problem.
Right. And in terms of keeping your voice in shape, is there anything that you have to do specifically to make sure that you can perform live?
No, I don't really believe in that, to be honest with you. I know other guys that like they'll drink tea, or there was one dude in one band that would like take these like throat lozenges. I feel like all that stuff is like, I don't know, maybe psychological, but for me, it's just practicing, just keeping your voice in shape. Not, yeah. To me, honestly, I think the worst thing is not doing it for too long. If you stop doing it for too long, this is just me personally, but if you stop doing it, then starting back up again is a while. So if you take a couple months off, 2-3 months off, like, yeah, I think your voice is gonna feel a little weak for a while. And that's just me personally.
So the album is being released by Horror, Pain, Gore, Death. They repackaged the first 2 albums as a compilation, and they also released your last EP. How did you get involved with the label, and why were they the right fit for this?
Because they were the ones that were interested. So when the first album came out, so back to like the whole Relic conversation and like not making the same mistakes twice. So when the first album came out, I was like, okay, well, how do I promote this? And so I was talking with Frank Garcia, our second guitar player. He's like, well, you could pay a promotional company to send out your album and get reviews and interviews and stuff like that. I was like, oh, you could do that? You can just pay for that? He's like, yeah, there's a company called Clawhammer PR. And Frank's like, I've done some work for them in the past, so I might be able to get us like some kind of, discount. So he did. We got like a promotional deal through Clawhammer, and they did our first record. And then when the second record came out, we did the same thing where Clawhammer, did like a press release for the CD. And then I just reached out to the guy from Clawhammer. I forget his name now. Sorry, Clawhammer dude. I think his name's Scott, but I could be totally wrong on that. But anyway, I reached out to him and just said, hey, could you help us get on a label, or, and he said, like, I could just mention to the labels I work with that you guys are looking for a label, and I'll see whoever bites, I can just send them your way. And so there was a couple of people that got a hold of us, and just Mike from Horror, Pain, Gore, Death has just been so easy to work with, and just like an enthusiastic dude, like just very enthusiastic about like our project. And I don't know if he's like that with every band. I imagine he probably is, and that's cool. Like, I'm glad he's just enthusiastic about the bands he's working with. But yeah, he's just been really easy to work with. And I've never actually talked with him. It's all just been through email, but it's been easy. Like, he responds to his emails, and so he's been easy to work with. He was just the guy that was like, hey, I'm interested. And I was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And he's like, well, because we released the second album on our own. And he was the one that was like, well, what if we re-release the first two as like a double disc? And I was like, okay, awesome. And then, he did the third album and the fourth album. So I like working with him. He's, like I said, he's been easy to work with. And, the other thing too is like, he's kept his word. And so I think that's extremely, extremely, extremely valuable, like working with people who are honest and do what they say they're going to do.
So, for the Declaration of War Eternal is out now through Horror Pain Gore Death Productions. Mike, how can people order the album? What's the best way to get it?
The best way to get it would be through the Horror Pain Gore Death website. I would say please buy it through there. As much as I appreciate people buying the CD from us, I think like buying it from the label shows the label that they made a good choice in working with us. So I would say start there. If you want to support us directly, we appreciate it. We have a Bandcamp page. Just go to Bandcamp, type in Blood of the Wolf, and you can get it there. You can hear the music on YouTube if you want to check it out first. I think you can do that on Bandcamp. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, I think, has it too. If you want to order directly from us, we can do that too. Just get in touch with us through our Facebook page. Yeah. And if you really want to support us, you buy some merch, like a t-shirt or something that you can't just download. But yeah, like go through the label. My advice.
And HPGD is selling bundles, right, of like shirts and CDs and things like that?
They are. They're selling shirts. And the design I sent to Mike, you can only get that design through Horror Pain Gore Death. So again, like, don't shy away from purchasing through the label. Again, like as much as people like want to support us directly, and I totally understand that and appreciate it, but you are supporting us like buying through the label, because again, like you're showing Mike that he made a good decision in signing us. And so yeah, I would say go through him.
And if people want to keep up to date with news on Blood of the Wolf, what's the best way to do that?
Facebook. I know Facebook isn't the best place for music, but it is the best way to just kind of figure out what we're doing. If you want like news and updates and when we're playing shows and live footage, band pictures, things like that, definitely go through Facebook. And if you are interested in buying merch from us, like you can see all our merch on Facebook. We have an Instagram page too, but again, it's not really good for like hearing music, but if you want to see pictures and stuff like that, you can follow us through Instagram as well. And I think it's bloodofthewolf.band on Instagram. I think on Facebook it's Blood of the Wolf Music. I don't even know our exact handles, but I don't think we're hard to. I don't think we're hard to find. Not that we're that big, but I think because we've been around for almost 10 years now, we're out there. It shouldn't be too difficult to find.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, just thank you for reaching out. Thanks for the opportunity to do this, and thanks. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you, Mike.